Wars. You hear a lot of amens out there. Well, we become reliant upon resources we don't control. In order to maintain control, we have to pick winners and losers and side with individuals out there that maybe we shouldn't be spending our resources on. Spending on monetary resources on, or the resources that we have in this country, so we have access to some resource we don't have in this country. I think there's some degree of truth to that. I also think there's a degree of truth to this as well. The protection, the security of the nation comes from our superpower status. Where does the 800-pound gorilla sit? Anywhere the 800-pound gorilla wants to sit. And so there is some truth to that concept of security, of strength, of quality of life that comes from carrying the big stick.
So where did they learn to compromise?
I don't think they have. And very good. You set me up. You throw them up and I'll knock them out, right? Yeah. Where have they learned to compromise? They haven't yet. And the same arguments that we were having back then, we have today. Wrapped up maybe in different packages, over different issues, but they really kind of come back to the same arguments. States' rights versus the federal government. Superpower versus protectionism. Global markets versus, local markets. Same discussions we might have about Walmart, could have taken place under the same, it wasn't a Walmart, but my point is the same concepts of cheap product, stretching a dollar, global trade, and whether or not that's good or healthy or not good or healthy could have taken place here as they are taking place now. Now, you can go back to the debates. Some of the very first, the televised debates are kind of good to take a look at, but you can go further back. Take a look at the Nixon-Kennedy debates and the issues that they're discussing. I used to, on my Blackboard course, my course online, I used to have the what at that time was the Bush-Gore debates and the Kennedy-Nixon debates. And if you go through the issues, they haven't changed. They're relatively the same. The names, the places may have changed, but the issues haven't. The role of government, it's standing in the world. Those issues haven't changed. So you keep tossing them up, and I'll keep knocking them out. Very good. All right, so you got Adams, Jefferson. They don't get along. Adams is on his way out. Jefferson beats him. In that period, we like to call that lame duck period, if you will, leading up to Adams going out, he begins to appoint in this case, many federal employees, judges, really.
Don't they try to fire him or something?
What's that?
Don't they try to fire him or not pay him or something like that?
Yes, yeah, you got it. That's the Marbury versus Madison case, is they try not to seat these judges. That all the appointments that are made by Adams that are supposed to be carried out by Adams' Secretary of State, who has a hand in this, a guy by the name of John Marshall, they don't all come to fruition. And one of those judges, a guy by the name of William Marbury, wants his appointment. And after Adams is out and Jefferson is in, Marbury goes, and again, Madison, the Secretary of State, their responsibility to fulfill these appointments. He goes knocking on the door, hey, I want my appointment. And Madison's argument basically is, we're not going to give it to you. And Marbury, seeking justice, if you will, says, all right, well, let's take it to the court. This an interesting thing happened. What's that? Yeah, you're a judge, or a would-be judge, is taking the Secretary of State to court. And the court that they're ultimately going to end up in is this U.S. Supreme Court. Well, a funny thing happened on the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. As Adams was on his way out, he appointed John Marshall to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, that confirmation took place, and Congress confirms, the Senate specifically confirms those judges' positions. But unlike presidents who are elected and unelected, unlike congressmen who are elected and unelected, judges are appointed, and their term is for life. For times of good behavior. The Constitution says for times of good behavior. So life, potentially. So you don't just get rid of judges by unelecting them. And Adams has appointed all Federalists, right, judges. Let's put it in terms today, Democrats, Republican. It would be like George Bush on his way out, when he still had the control of Congress, the Senate. Barack Obama beats him. The number of U.S. senators who are going to take office in January is to the advantage of the Democrats. And so he begins to appoint as many federal judges as he can, getting the confirmation. And you can bet they're all Republican cronies, I guess. At least that would be the perception. On his way out, he's putting as many of his buddies, as many individuals who ideologically would support the concepts of the Republicans in office as he leaves. And you can't just pull them back out. Once they're appointed and confirmed, they're in there. Well, Marbury and some set of 20 or so what we call midnight justices, their appointment is not totally fulfilled. And so Marbury takes it to court. Well, Marshall, a Federalist, Adams Secretary of State, is on that U.S. Supreme Court. And rather than Madison saying, all right, no, Madison says, yeah, let's take it to court. Because there is a way to get rid of a judge other than death or retirement. I wasn't going to blackmail. But impeachment works.
Impeachment.
You can impeach a judge. You can impeach a federal judge. And the potential is there, particularly during this period of time. I mean, today we wouldn't think about impeaching a judge specifically for their opinion, their interpretation of the Constitution. But at this particular time, Marshall is in real jeopardy of being impeached if he makes the wrong decision, if he opines incorrectly. So Jefferson and Madison say, yeah, let's take it to court. Let's take it before Marshall. And rock, hard place, Marshall, he's got to make a decision between his Federalist ideology, friends, cohorts, and the Jefferson, and then now Madison, anti-Federalists who have a different ideology, who have a different belief in the role of the federal government. He's got to make a decision. Two things happen. One, Marshall employs what I like to call the first principle of politics. Be willing to give up the battle
To win the war.
to win the war. All right? And that's true in politics, it's true in war, but it's also true in politics. Don't sweat the small stuff. Keep your mind on the big picture. The small stuff, Marbury's small stuff. Whether or not 20 more midnight judges get their appointment or don't is small stuff. What's the war? Where did they learn to compromise? What's the war? That's the war. Marshall realizes that as the lone branch of Federalists, judicial branch, he's in a much better position to protect this mentality of superpower than he would be if he were gone. That if the Supreme Court had also turned to anti-Federalists, to Democrat-Republicans. So Marshall says, sorry, Marbury.
He bows to.
Marbury's out. He bows to Madison and bows to... But here's the great thing. The second thing is that he employs, I don't want to call it necessarily the second principle of politics, but he makes lemonade out of lemons. He's put in a situation where he's got to sacrifice Marbury. He does it for the war. But rather than simply bow to Madison and say, well, Madison, you were right, we should have fit. He doesn't. He comes out and says, you know what, Madison, you're wrong. You're wrong. Marbury should get those appointments. But because of the Judiciary Act, and here's somebody out there said it, because the Judiciary Act, an act of Congress, is unconstitutional, it basically puts me in this position right now. It's unconstitutional. This is unconstitutional. Because this act is unconstitutional, I cannot rule in favor of Marbury, even though I should, even though he is right. And because I can't rule in favor of Marbury, you lose Marbury, and by default, Madison wins. Not because he's right. He's wrong. But I can't find that way.